Sometimes failure feels like a personal verdict, not just something that I'm going through, not an outcome, not a chapter, a verdict. Like it says something about me, and frankly, what it's saying is kind of rude. Like somewhere there's a permanent file on me labeled promising, but disappointing. Failure still hits me personally sometimes, even though I know better, which is annoying. I wish I could say that I outgrew that feeling completely, but that would be a lie. I have tools now, but I still spiral sometimes. I've outgrown a lot of things, but apparently not self-blame. That one's freaking durable. When something falls apart in my life, there's still a split-second reflex where my brain goes straight to, what does this say about me? Instead of, what does this say about the situation? If a relationship ends, I still have that moment where I assume that I did something wrong instead of accepting that sometimes things just don't work out. If something work-related collapses, I still have the instinct to assume that I'm the problem before I even look at the structure around me. My brain doesn't ask what happened, it asks how I personally ruined the global economy. If I fail at anything, there's still that flicker of shame before logic has time to catch up and remind me that some outcomes are never shaped by effort alone. It's quick, too, like a shame jump scare. No warning, just bam, you're a disappointment. Hi, my name is Sheila, and I'm a failure. Hi, Sheila, and I'm starting to be fine with it. I don't like it, but I respect the resume. I'm not a coach or a guru. I'm just your internet auntie with 55 years of stories, scars, and healthy doses of sarcasm. And if you're sitting there convinced that you ruined your own life because something didn't work out, I want you to stay with me. Because failure is not what broke you. It's how fast you turned it into a personality trait. What I didn't understand yet was the failures that I hated the most were building the exact parts of me that I rely on now. And I was misreading all of it in real time. I'll share that with you later. When I look back at my big failures now, they didn't show up as one big collapse, right? They showed up as a steady accumulation of things that just didn't land the way that I thought they would. It's like opening those stupid junk mail envelopes that look like checks. I freaking hate those things. And I fall for it every time, thinking that there's some errant amount of money out there with my name on it. My layoff 2 years ago still feels like my greatest failure. And that kind of failure hits differently because it isn't just financial, it's identity. I built my life routine around my career. I built my confidence around my competence. I built my sense of usefulness around being needed somewhere. And then one meeting later, and I'm sitting at home in the same body with the same skills, wondering why none of it translated into security. Nothing about me changed, just their decisions about my usefulness. Same skills, same work ethic, same caffeine dependency, different value. It feels personal, even when you know intellectually it isn't. Failure has looked like doing everything right and still ending up back at zero, wondering what the rules actually were, if they were even real, and who made them up in the first place. Like I followed the instructions exactly and still somehow assembled disappointment, with extra screws left over and everything. And then there's YouTube, because doing this contains a risk that's its own flavor of failure. YouTube will humble you in ways that your childhood never even considered. You put your thoughts out there publicly. You build something from scratch. You invest time, emotion, vulnerability, consistency, and some videos land and some don't. Videos that I thought were going to change the world barely cleared the algorithm's throat. I handed the internet my best work, and the internet just blinked slowly back at me. I try not to take it personally, but of course I do. Well, I say I don't take it personally while taking it extremely personally in private. Because when you build something from your own lived experience, it feels like people are responding to you personally, not the work that you're doing. Like you put your insides on the internet and everyone just kept scrolling. Failure has looked like watching numbers dip and wondering if your voice mattered less than you thought that it did. Nothing humbles you faster than analytics quietly disrespecting your existence. And for a long time, I looked at all those outcomes, layoffs, pivots, financial stress, creative uncertainty, and I believe that they pointed to the same problem. Me. The common denominator was me. Because that's what I was taught that success was supposed to look like. You do the right things, you get the right outcomes. Effort equals security, loyalty equals stability, competence equals protection. Adulthood was a vending machine and I just hadn't pushed the right buttons yet. So When something collapsed, I didn't question the system. I questioned myself because it never even freaking occurred to me that the system's the one that might be stupid. Because if success is supposed to be guaranteed when you do everything right, then failure must mean you did something wrong. Yeah? That belief right there is what turned every setback into a verdict. Failure doesn't just threaten outcomes, it threatens identity. It makes you wonder if you're less capable, less disciplined, less valuable than you thought that you were. People aren't afraid of failure. They're afraid of what failure says about who they are. If the job ends, am I still competent? If the channel dips, does my voice still matter? If my body changes, am I still allowed to feel confident inside of it? Failure feels like a worth wound long before it feels like a learning experience. But what I understand now, and I still have to remind myself of sometimes, is that failure isn't proof that you're incapable. Failure is proof that you're participating. You can't fail at things that you never had the courage to attempt. You only fail at things that you're actively trying to build, hold, risk, or reinvent. Failure is not the opposite of success. But the more distance that I get from my own failures, the more I see how much of that interpretation was trained. We were raised inside of this outcome worship where results mattered more than resilience. If it worked, you were impressive. If it didn't, you were a cautionary tale that people discussed in low voices. Tired? That's a character flaw. Burned out? Ooh, you have poor time management. On the verge of a collapse? Have you tried being less dramatic? Nobody parades their breakdowns. They just show up later with a book deal and act like it was all strategic. No one shows you the layoffs behind the promotions. No one shows you the pivots behind the success. No one shows you the years where nothing worked before something finally did. So we grew up thinking that failure is abnormal when really it's structural to growth. The villain was never failure itself. It was the belief that failure meant that you were defective. The part that I didn't understand why all of those failures were happening is that none of them were empty experiences. They were building things in me while I was busy interpreting them as proof that I was falling behind, that I was a loser. I hated every one of them when I was in it. I want to be very clear about that. I did not feel grateful. I did not feel wiser. I did not feel like I was growing. But growth doesn't always feel like progress when it's happening. Sometimes it feels like everything that you built is just like rotting in front of you, and you're standing there Googling whether emotional mold is permanent. Failure feels like decay when you're inside it, but decay is what feeds new growth, whether you want it to or not. My layoff didn't just dismantle my routine, it dismantled my delusion that usefulness guaranteed protection. It forced me to separate usefulness from security. YouTube has done something similar in a completely different way. Putting your thoughts out publicly and watching them flop in real time builds an emotional callus that you can't get in private. And every time that happens, I feel it personally for a moment. Like I just stood up in a crowded room, told the truth, and everyone suddenly found their phones fascinating. But then I go, fine, I'll learn, I'll adjust, I'll crawl back in there and try again like the little hungry raccoon that I am. It has taught me how to stay visible even when reception fluctuates. It's taught me that my voice cannot be dependent upon immediate validation. It has given me thicker skin, but more importantly, it has given me creative resilience. Failure in relationships taught me discernment. I learned what I needed, what I would never negotiate again, and what red flags look like when they're not dressed up as potential. Those lessons did not come from success. They came from endings. Financial failure built a different kind of growth. It forced me to understand money beyond surface comfort. I had to learn how to be more frugal, how to prioritize stability over appearance, how to separate lifestyle from actual security. And then there's my bod. Weight loss attempts that did not stick the way that I wanted them to. Cycles of effort that didn't produce permanent outcomes. You know, my body and I have been in a long-term disagreement where she keeps voting against my plans. And winning. For a long time, I interpreted that as a personal failure too, but what it really was teaching me was self-acceptance. It forced me to examine how much of my worth I'd outsourced to my appearance. And menopause deepened that lesson in a way that nothing else could, because menopause removes the illusion of total control over your body. Your hormones just start making executive decisions without consulting the management. I wake up some mornings and I'm like, what? Wait, what? Who approved this? Who? I had to learn how to live in my body instead of constantly trying to renegotiate my approval of it. Because eventually you realize that you're not remodeling the house, you're aging inside of it. But when I look across all these failures now, professional, financial, relational, physical, I can see what they were doing underneath the surface. They were building capacity. Failure didn't accumulate damage. It accumulated range, discernment, resilience, realism, and self-acceptance. Failure is fertilizer. Nothing glamorous about that. It's emotional compost. You hate touching it, but everything honest in your life eventually grows out of it. It feeds growth in ways that comfort never does. And most of the strengths that I rely on today did not come from things that worked. They came from things that didn't. Success made me confident. Failure made me accurate. I'm curious how this shows up in your life. Let me know in the comments. What's a failure that you thought ruined you at the time, but you can see now built something in you that you actually rely on? Because I think a lot of us are walking around carrying strengths that we only have because something went sideways first. There are also failures that do belong to me. Not every collapse is systemic. Not every outcome is structural. Some of them are just me. Some of them are just me making decisions like future me is a different person with a better attitude. I delegate irresponsibly to myself. Now, if I fail a test because I didn't study, that's my poor time management holding hands in the consequences aisle. If I run out of underwear because I didn't do laundry, that's operational failure at the household level. Nothing humbles you faster than realizing your downfall is Haynes related. Now, if I ignore my health, overextend myself, avoid hard conversations, procrastinate on things that matter, those outcomes are mine to own. And owning them matters because accountability is not the same thing as self-condemnation. I can admit I did something stupid without filing it under permanent personality trait. Owning a mistake does not require turning it into an identity. Some failures are just reminders that I'm human, inconsistent, avoidant sometimes, and still learning how to manage myself inside of a complicated life with a brain that sometimes wants peace more than it wants progress. The key difference now is that I can own those moments without letting them define my worth. I can say, yeah, okay, I get it, that one's on me, without turning one bad decision into a full documentary about my character flaws. Because growth requires honesty, not perfection. Failure is not a verdict about my worth as a human being. It's not. I still have moments where I question myself, but I'm working really hard to not interpret it as evidence that I am less capable or less valuable than I thought that I was. I interpret it as evidence that I'm still participating in my own life. Still risking, still building, still learning things success would never have forced me to learn. Because failure gives you range. It makes you harder to fool. It makes you less impressed by outcomes. So, if you're sitting in failure right now, feeling like it says something permanent about who you are, I want you to consider something else. Maybe it's not a verdict. Maybe it's fertilizer. Maybe it's feeding growth that you just can't see yet. Maybe it's building capacity that comfort would never have required. And maybe years from now, the very thing that you're interpreting as proof that you ruined your life will turn out to be the thing that expanded it. Here's what I did after some of my biggest failures. I told myself that I had time to recover, time to rebuild, time to figure it out later when I felt stronger, clearer, more ready. I kept acting like life had me on some kind of emotional payment plan, like I could just circle back to myself once things settled down. And what I didn't realize while I was sitting there healing was that I wasn't just recovering. I was postponing my own life. Sound familiar? Let's talk about it.